What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to basketball. If you guys can't tell, I've been trying to do kind of like a mock draft a week just because I think it's interesting to kind of follow the story that is this NBA draft. Obviously, we know that this isn't the most loaded draft class of all time. We've talked about before how we think that there's some interesting pieces here and there, but what becomes really interesting to me is that when you look at the top teams and you look at the top players, there's not exactly a clean fit. And what does that leave room for? Trades. And so today we're going to look at the latest mock draft because they've started to work some of those trades into the draft because everybody knows that they're probably going to happen. But without further ado, let's get into it. Oh, y'all didn't think it'd be that easy, did you? No, make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment. I've responded to every single comment on my YouTube channel up to this point, and I intend to keep on doing so. So give your boy a comment or something. I don't know. We can talk about whatever in there. Shout out Bleacher Report and Zach Buckley here for writing this article. Can't wait to take a look at it. The 2024 NBA mock draft, how 3 blockbuster trades could impact the lottery. So here's my theory with this, all right? Because blockbuster trade in this draft doesn't immediately make a lot of common sense to me, and here's why. Because there's nobody worth trading that's a blockbuster trade that's worth a draft pick in this class. There just probably isn't, at least not with the value we have. Somebody always comes out of every draft class, but as far as we understand it right now, nobody's trading like Darius Garland for like the 2nd overall pick or something like that, right? What I think is that these picks are still like somewhat valuable to people. So what's going to happen is it's going to be like a Darius Garland for like XYZ good players and like the 2nd overall pick or something like that. Like, I think that those picks are going to be the supplementary pieces of the trades, but you guys don't care about my ideas on it. Let's talk about it. The 1st overall pick is still Alex Sarr. I don't think there's any reason for Alex Sarr not to go number 1 at this point. I've met with plenty of other NBA scouts and watched enough film on this guy for them and me to just all be like, yeah, no, he's probably the best player in this class, and he's got some upside to him. You're going to bring him in. He's instantly going to be a very impact defender. No question about that. It's kind of interesting that they have him at the power forward spot first. I see him as more of a center. You're looking at 7 foot, 7'1", moves incredibly well, has great instincts to like rotate and go get a ball too, which is impressive. He's not just like waiting down there in the paint for people to come to him. He's moving to go get those blocks, which is really, really important. Showing some outside touch, the ability to put the ball on the floor a little bit, run in transition, should make your team a lot better as soon as you take him, with some potential upside because he's still young and can put some muscle on. Very, very excited about Alex Sarr, and I don't think there's any reason that the Hawks need to trade out of this, because even if they just kind of like bottom out, I think that he'll be a good building block piece for them, and if they decide to keep Trae Young, he's probably a nice new starting center for them. Next up, the Washington Wizards. I don't see them making a trade necessarily either. There's not really a point. Zachary Risache, he's my number 2 on the board as well. A lot of people have started to get a little more buzz around Risache because they actually got to see him play in the playoffs. And here's the thing, like, young foreign guys don't get a big chance to play a lot of minutes. That's just how it works overseas. They make you earn your minutes through like just playing a certain amount of years in the league, right? That's just how it works. But he went off in his limited minutes in a playoff game for his French team. You saw his ability to get up, be athletic, run in transition, just be a crazy good shooter. I think that he's the 2nd best player in this class right away that can just come in, make an impact right away, probably be a starter. I see him as a Michael Porter Jr. type, but a little more athletic. There's moments when we were watching his film where it was like, okay, he doesn't seem like that explosive, but from when I look at him, he just looks like a young guy that's still growing into his body. I think that you're going to see him get more and more athletic within like the next year and a half or so as he starts to kind of just mature into his body a little more. But the Wizards picking him up, I think makes a lot of sense. They just need whatever talent they can get. I'm sure they'd rather have a center, and I bet you there's a case to take Klingon here just because he might be the most impactful right away. But Risache, very, very nice basketball player. Can't blame him at all. All right, this is probably when the trade's going to happen. Number 3 at Houston. And yep, we have a trade. The Cleveland Cavaliers are here. Have we traded Darius Garland? No. We have Donovan Mitchell on the move. Interesting. So, like, let's talk about Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. There's rumors that, like, they probably don't want to keep both of them, and I can understand that, and I can sympathize with that. Even in our ideal offseason for Cleveland, we ended up moving Darius Garland. I don't think you need both of them on the same team. If you can find a way to make it work, fine. I think there's plenty of reasons to say you got to move one of them. Obviously, I think they'd rather keep Donovan Mitchell. He's clearly the better player of the two. It's not like both of them aren't good, But I think if you had to pick one, it'd be Donovan Mitchell you want to keep. But let's say you can't. Let's say he doesn't want to stick around. You got to trade him. What are we getting in this trade? You're getting Jalen Green, interesting young player who started to put it together a little bit last season. I still don't think he's maybe the brightest NBA player ever, but he started to figure it out a little bit. Tari Eason, promising forward. Jayshawn Tate, another young forward. Jacques Landale, salary filler, another backup big for the team, which could be interesting because there's talks about them moving Jared Allen. I don't think it makes a ton of sense to do that, but maybe. And then they get the number 3 pick, who they then use on Ron Holland. So this is where I get a little confused. I'm not sure I'm taking Ron Holland with this pick. I understand positionally why that makes some sense. There's obviously a ton of potential in Ron Holland. You watch him play, and you're like, yep, looks like an NBA player. But when you actually stop and watch the film, you're like, he just doesn't look like he knows what he's doing out there for the most part. But like, man, does he look like he'd be a good basketball player if he could ever figure it out. Can Cleveland be the one to bring it out of him? Maybe. Like, they're not like a bad organization by any means, so maybe they could figure it out, though he'll have plenty of other good players around him to help him develop. There won't be a ton of pressure on him right away, so that makes some sense, right? He's not going to have a ton of ball handling duties or anything like that. I'd be a little bit concerned, like, throwing him out there with a Mobley and a Jared Allen, so maybe another move would have to take place because you got like no shooting on the team then, and that's concerning in itself. You probably have a pretty good defense, but like you might as well just stick with Okoro then at that point. So I'm a little bit confused about that one, but then the Houston Rockets pick up Donovan Mitchell. I mean, if they were able to get Donovan Mitchell for this, then good on them, right? That's just, I think you say goodbye to Jalen Green really quick. You say goodbye to this number 3 overall pick really quick. This is something we've talked about with this Rockets pick. We're like, there's just nobody there that makes sense for them, and they don't need another young player to keep developing. They just don't. Like, they want to start winning now. If they can bring in Donovan Mitchell for this, then good on them. If it was Darius Garland, I'd probably do the trade too if I was Houston, in all honesty. Like, I think either one of them for this, I'd be pretty ecstatic about it if I was a Houston Rockets fan. But I don't know how I'd feel about this if I was a Cavs fan. Like, I guess maybe Jalen Green looks a little bit better in a new situation or something, and there's a clear, like, point guard number 1 on the team, then that's cool. But interesting move nonetheless. So who do we got at number 4? The San Antonio Spurs, Stephon Castle. All right, so we talked about Stephon Castle a lot in the Hornets' ideal offseason, and a lot of people talk to me about it. They're like, oh, Stephon Castle, he wants to play point guard. He's not going to go to the Charlotte Hornets or whatever. And so here's the scoop with it, right? Stephon Castle's camp has been going around being like, he's a point guard. He's only going to work out for teams that are going to take him as a point guard, right? I've talked to the NBA scouts about it, and none of them buy it. Like, here's what's actually happening, right? Let's read between the lines. At UConn, they know exactly what they're doing. They're very particular in how they want to protect their players when they get to the NBA, right? Because they want success for them, right? Like, they do a lot to develop the personalities and the players of these guys. They want him to end up in certain organizations, and what they're trying to do is force his way into San Antonio. They know that culturally, he is a fit there. From everything everybody's told me, Stephon Castle, great young man, like very mature for his age, very smart basketball player, team player, and yeah, like we watch that on the court. Like, that's totally evident. They know that the Spurs don't really need someone at his position. So they're like, oh, you guys need a point guard? Yeah, he's a point guard. He can play point guard. Like, he can do that. And so now the Spurs are like, interesting. And the rumor is that he's kind of gaining some traction with them. And what's probably happening, and I wouldn't be surprised if this happened, is the Spurs are just going, okay, our guy really isn't in this draft if we can't go up and get like Reece Shea. Like, maybe we just take the best culture fit and just kind of figure it out from there. And that is Stephon Castle. The concerns with him is he can't shoot, right? And honestly, most scouts don't think he is a point guard. They see him as a 2 that can be a secondary ball handler, and I would tend to agree with that. But I do think that there's like a good cultural fit there. It makes sense that they're trying to push him to the Spurs. They don't want him in like Charlotte or some of these other franchises. They're like, we want him here. Like, let's get him here. Whatever we can do to make that happen. And I know the UConn coaches are definitely calling up the Spurs staff and being like, you got to take this dude. You got to take this dude. Right? So wouldn't be surprised if that happened. There's a little context for you guys. What do we got now? The Pelicans have moved up to get Donovan Clingan. Ooh, I love this already. Donovan Clingan at 5 is a steal already. Donovan Clingan is probably my 3rd prospect on my big board. You guys have heard me say it. I'm actually putting out a Donovan Clingan video tomorrow, so you guys can look out for that. Just breaking down some of his film. Spoiler alert, it's pretty much just like, wow, this guy's going to be a good NBA player. Like, there's not a ton to critique with him in it. But anyway, Donovan Clingan, really cool. I think Donovan Clingan's one of these guys that can come in, make an instant impact. He'll be an instant starter in the NBA, make your defense a ton better as soon as he gets on the court, and he'll be your center for a long time. I think he's a really, really skilled prospect. So what are the Pelicans doing to get him? Oh, they're trading Brandon Ingram. What are we getting back? Oh, we're getting back Jaden Ivey, Beef Stew, the number 5 pick, and a 2026 lottery protected pick. Okay. So I was really confused at first. I'm like, we're trading Brandon Ingram for the 5th pick, and I have to remind myself what I told myself at the beginning of this video is like, Clingan's what they're throwing in to make this happen. So this is the Pistons being like, we don't need another young player. We need some good basketball players on this team. I don't know if it's Brandon Ingram necessarily. I guess with Ivy gone, there's one less ball handler. So I guess, okay, I can get behind that a little bit more. You could maybe even move a Sarr over to the 2 then if you do that. I personally think a Sarr would be a nice shooting guard in the NBA. Like, I know he can't shoot, but I just like him at that position. So what do the Pelicans get then? So they're losing Brandon Ingram, very hard player to replace. Brandon Ingram's a very good basketball player. I know he wasn't great in the playoffs. Calm down. He's a really good basketball player. They get Jaden Ivey, so they get their point guard for the future. Ivey actually gets to play some point guard with some good players around him. That's cool. They get Beef Stew. They get some beefiness at the backup forward spot. That's cool. They get Donovan Clingan. They get their center for the future that I think would play really well off of Zion. You'd have some elite rim protection and a guy that could possibly be a hub on the team. That's cool. And another first-round pick on top of it. I can support this trade for both teams. I like it. I don't think the Pelicans need to trade Brandon Ingram, but I think that this is a pretty solid haul for him. Actually, we theorized that there could be a Darius Garland, just Brandon Ingram swap in general, and it would benefit both teams really, really well. But I like this one as well. I think this would be really cool. Next up, we have the Charlotte Hornets, Reed Shepherd. All right, so prepare Reed Shepherd comments. I know I'm not the biggest Reed Shepherd fan. I've said it a couple times. You guys always come in and you're like, you don't watch basketball enough. You notice I watch too much college basketball, and I don't like watching college basketball. I get paid to do it, and that's how it works. But anyway, I've watched enough Reed Shepherd in my time. Elite shooter, solid ball handler, sneaky good athlete. I'm worried about the physicals with him. We've talked about that before. He's just small and scrawny, and I know he's got good defensive instincts. And I'm not saying he can't be like a solid NBA player. I just worry about taking a guy like him with like the 6th pick or something like that, because I see him as like a backup 1/2 combo guard that can be a hustle defender and can be a really good shooter and come play off screens and everything, maybe initiate some offense. I get worried about his defense a little bit when you get into swings and people start attacking him because he's just physically very underwhelming. So I don't know. I struggle to see where he fits in. If the Charlotte Hornets take him, where does that put him? You probably start Trey Mann then, and you have him coming off the bench. I could see it. They don't have a ton of like real lethal shooters on the team, so maybe you can talk yourself into it that way and hope that he's kind of a reserve point guard that can at least kind of run the show a little bit for you, because you got Misic on the team too, and he's got what, like 1 year left on his contract, maybe 2. So I can see it. I don't think it's the worst thing. I think I'd maybe rather have a Connect or something like that at this spot, but fair enough. Portland Trailblazers, Dalton Connect. Yeah, that just makes too much sense. We talk about this whenever we talk about the Trailblazers draft, is they need to draft people that are going to help Scoot Henderson get better. That's what the Trailblazers need to do, and this is why Scoot Henderson wasn't successful this year. His team didn't make sense for him. Like, he had a center that was constantly in his way. Jeremy Grant, nice basketball player at the end of the day. Don't really have a ton of complaints about him. He had a bunch of wings that weren't really great spacers, and even if they shot well from the field, they didn't have any gravity to them. They were willing to concede those shots to them. He had like no run, jump, and dunk guys to really play with. You look at some of the other guards that were trying to take the ball out of his hands the whole time, and when Scoot's like, one real big thing he did this year is he was a great pick and roll guy, like really good pick and roll guy in the NBA, really good at navigating it. When you gave him a run, jump, and dunk type center, it worked really well for them. So we need to start getting like some 3-and-D type wings out there. Connect wasn't the best defensive player, but man, can he shoot the basketball. He's got attitude physically. He looks like he could be a defender one day, so we hope that you can develop him in that way. I think this makes a lot of sense for the Trailblazers. Just get the right guy to start building around Scoot, man. You got to do him that solid, because you traded a lot to go get that guy, so got to make it happen. Next pick, with the 8th pick, the Spurs take Nikola Topic. I guess I don't know. I'd have to think about who else is available. Maybe because they took Castle, they feel okay taking kind of just a shot at point guard then with Topic. So here's the thing with Topic. You guys have heard me say it before. If you haven't, this is my thoughts on him. really, really crafty, really aggressive getting to the hoop, good passer. Shot form is really weird. They describe him as a jitterbug. I've heard a lot of times. I'm like, yeah, that's a good way to describe his movement. It is erratic and it is weird. Like, he just moves very strange on the basketball court. And like, I wish I could like pull up some film to show you guys. There's not a ton of film on him, and that's where I struggled to just form a complete opinion on him. Because in the little bit I've seen, his movements weird me out, his shooting form weirds me out. But then I'm like, wow, yeah, that was a really crafty finish. Or like, wow, really good pass or something like that. And he's got phenomenal size. He's like 6'6" and pretty built already. He's played professional ball, so feels like a Spurs type player, but I just haven't seen enough of him to have a strong opinion. So if anyone could figure it out, though, it's probably the Spurs. Next up, another trade. This is the third trade. The Toronto Raptors have moved up to select Cody Williams. So what's happening here? The Memphis Grizzlies had this pick, and they're picking up Jakob Poeltl. Okay, they got their new center, very defensive-oriented center. Got it, I understand. The Toronto Raptors receive Brandon Clark. Okay, interesting. What do the Raptors need Brandon Clark for? I don't really know exactly what they're going to do with Brandon Clark. They get Zaire Williams. They get another wing to put on the team that they can try to develop. Eventually, some of these wings have to work out, right? And then they get Cody Williams as well with the 9th overall pick. So this team's going to be absolutely loaded at like the small forward, power forward spot. They're again doing this thing where the Toronto Raptors have all these lengthy wings, and they're just going to eventually make it work. To talk about Cody Williams a little bit, very, very raw player. Seems to see the game very, very well, but is lacking like a little bit of confidence and a little bit of strategic play and like what shots he's taking. So that's something to look at. The shooting was pretty good in like limited quantities and everything. When we watched his film, like I thought his shooting form looked fine. For the most part, I'm not too concerned about it. He wasn't as explosive of an athlete as I would kind of hope him to be, but he is still young and he's raw, and like he could be somebody that's growing into his body as well. It didn't necessarily look like it to me, but there's certainly a lot of potential there, and he sees the game well, and with his frame, like he could become a really interesting player. So basically the Raptors get a bunch of like potential and they lose Jakob Poeltl. Well, I guess with Jakob Poeltl gone, Brandon Clark has a role then, but then are you starting Kelly Olynyk next year? Like, I'm a little bit confused what would be going on here with this pick. This just kind of seems like a nothing pick at the end of the day. Like, I'm sure the Grizzlies would be happy to get Jakob Poeltl, but otherwise, I don't really know. 10th pick, Matas Buzelis to the Jazz. Oh no, I'm about to get in trouble again. The Jazz pick up another lengthy Caucasian. I said it. If you guys aren't sure what I'm talking about, I just got some funny comments the last time that a mock draft had Buzelis going to the Jazz. I just made a comment that I was like, don't they have enough lengthy whites on this team? And they're like, whoa, what's the big idea with them being white? I'm like, I don't know. I've just noticed it. They've got a lot of lengthy whites on the team. But anyway, you guys know I'm probably not the biggest Matas Buzelis guy, and I'm not surprised to see him kind of slipping down draft things the more people watch him. From what I've seen and what I've heard people talk about is they're like, yeah, I just don't know what like he's really that great at and like what's really going to translate to the NBA, because they're like, he really can't dribble very well. Like, he's a pretty solid athlete for his size and frame and everything. Solid shooter, but like the numbers don't really reflect it. And so it's kind of like, okay, we look at how like skinny and like slim he is, and we're like, how good of a defender can he be if somebody tries to back him down at points or operate in the mid-range? Like, are his feet really quick enough to be a perimeter defender? And that's the thing, like, you look at him and you're like, okay, that looks like it could be a basketball player, but nothing's really screaming translate to me. And so I don't feel that great about Buzelis. The Jazz need a wing, though, and so I understand them wanting to take him here, considering all the other guys are off the board. So maybe it's worth a shot to them at the end of the day. I do hope that he succeeds, and I hope you guys know that when I criticize these guys, I really do hope that they succeed at the end of the day. And I'm going to timestamp this for any of you that put it in the comments like, oh, you're just hating on all these guys, aren't you? Because I know there's going to be comments about it. There always are. But anyway, like, I hope the best for Buzelis. I'm just giving my opinion on him. With the 11th pick, I can't say his name, Tijane Salyoun, another French guy. There's a lot of French guys going in this draft. France is going to be really, really good. So here's the thing with Salyoun. Please tell me how to say his name if you guys know. I have no idea. Huge potential guy, right? Not a lot of potential guys in this draft. This is one of them. I have him projected to go like 12 to OKC because I'm like, well, if anybody has time to develop somebody, it's them. You see shooting ability with this guy. You see athleticism. He's strong. He can move well. But there's times that he goes like ice cold then or something like that. He's really young and he hasn't gotten a ton of burn yet because he's young and he's playing overseas. But you look at him and you're like, okay, there's a power forward that's really big, pretty athletic, that can shoot a little bit. And you're like, I could really see this guy being a good NBA player. It's just going to take a little bit of time because he is really, really young. So if the Bulls took him there, I would be ecstatic. Ecstatic. We need a potential guy. We need someone that could maybe go and hit it big for us. Please let this happen. Please, if there's a basketball god out there, let me just get something for the Bulls. Just something, please. So who are the Thunder picking then? They're picking Rob Dillingham. I don't see any way that happens. I think they have enough guards. If anything, they're probably going to trade one this year. Rob Dillingham falling this far, I wouldn't be surprised by. Dillingham, we've talked about before, you can see the roadmap for how he could get to be a starting guard, right? Because he's got some of the craftiness, he's got the athleticism, he's got some of the shooting ability, but he's also inconsistent and he's really small. Like really small, and you're like, okay, who is he possibly going to defend in the NBA? Because he's that small and like that frail. Both him and Reed Shepherd, I kind of feel the same way about in that sense, where I'm just like, at least Reed Shepherd had some good defensive numbers behind him. Dillingham really didn't, but you're like, okay, I can see a pathway based off some of the skills he does have to where he could become a good player, right? And so that's where I hesitate a little bit more. Maybe that's why Oklahoma City feels like they could take a flyer on him here or something, but I don't think the fit makes a ton of sense, but I wouldn't be shocked to see Dillingham fall in the draft here. Number 13, Devin Carter, a guy I wouldn't be surprised if he moved up the boards a little bit. You guys have heard me talk about this in other mock draft videos. I think as the teams meet more and more of these players that don't really have a ton of upside and look like they have some problems, they're going to be like, maybe we should just take some of these older dudes that we're pretty sure are at least going to be able to play some NBA minutes for us and might get a second contract out of us and just kind of play it safe in this draft. And if we're bad this year, we're kind of playing for the 2025 draft more anyway because it's supposed to be better. So I could see the Kings picking Devin Carter here. Maybe they let Davion Mitchell walk because they have to find a way to bring Malik Monk back or something, and this guy can come in and be a solid three-point shooter, be a good distributor, be a solid defender, bring a little bit of size to the backup point guard. I could totally see that. I think Devin Carter's a pretty safe pick to be a decent enough rookie, so I could see him going 13. And who do we got here? Portland Trailblazers, Jacoby Walter. Please do not pick Jacoby Walter, Portland Trailblazers. Here's the thing with Jacoby Walter. Very athletic. There's a lot of, like, I don't even know if I should call it, like, potential. There's a lot of, like, NBA combo guard build in this guy that we've seen be a little bit successful as of late in the NBA. And there's not a huge sample size of guys like him being successful, but it's worked a couple times as of late. And that's what's interesting about him. His shot form is like not bad, but he like doesn't hit any shots. He can create the space, but he can't hit the shot. And he just seems like a guy that doesn't have a great feel for the game yet, but you're probably going to get a decent sized, like, feisty defender out of him. This just isn't who the Portland Trailblazers need because it doesn't work with Scoot Henderson. You don't need any more guys like this. He needs the ball to really be effective right now, and he's going to need a place where he can develop. I could see this a lot more with like the OKC pick or something. I think he's going to fall more to like the 18 to 20s personally, just from what like I'm hearing and stuff, but it only takes one team to select him, right? So I hope it's not the Portland Trailblazers, but I don't know. And so this article actually ends like at the lottery right there. There's nothing more after that. Like there's a bunch of other players that we could talk about with some second round picks and some late first round picks that I truly believe are going to be like somewhat valuable and I think could be interesting. I think about like the Yves Missy, like Zach Edey could be an interesting player. Bronny James is a guy to talk about, right? Like if you guys are curious, let me stand on my soapbox for just a second and talk about Bronny James. Truly, when I watch him, I can see an NBA player there. I don't think it's hard to imagine him being like a good defensive NBA backup point guard or something, and his athleticism is really good. He sees the floor very well. His shooting form looks fine. Like, I know there's a bunch of like pizzazz around him and everything because he's LeBron's kid, but he seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's never done anything wrong, right? So like, give the kid a chance. I truly think he was just being held back in college, and that's totally a thing that happens all the time. Give him a chance to develop in the NBA. I honestly think he could be a decent enough basketball player. But that's just me at the end of the day, and I can tell you a lot of other scouts are thinking it as well, and I can almost promise you somebody's going to pick him in the draft. Like, somebody will. But anyway, that's it for now. You guys let me know what you think of some of these trades. Like, I think that this one's kind of wild to trade Donovan Mitchell for all that, but I feel like you could get a little bit more. I love this one for the Pelicans, and then this Toronto one at the end I thought was just kind of odd, to say the least. But let me know what you guys think and any draft night trade ideas that you have. I'd love to discuss them and talk about them, but until then, we'll see y'all later. Thanks so much.